I'm Britt Clennet in Hong Kong and welcome to ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. Lawmakers give Disney expansion funding request the green light despite opposition. Death of woman from rare disease sparks calls for drug subsidies. And North Korea accuses the US of pushing Korean Peninsula to brink of war. Well, it seems hard to believe following stern opposition against the proposals, but today the Legislative Council approved the government's funding request to inject $5.45 billion into Disney's expansion plan in Hong Kong. The debate on the funding request had to be extended after lawmakers failed to put the request to a vote, even after the set 20-hour discussion period. In the end, the bill was passed with 30 votes for and 24 against. Those against the proposals say the government must renegotiate its deal with Disney.
Every time
Disneyland demands something, we have to give in. We're not opposing the expansion plan, but we don't want to be threatened and treated like an ATM machine.
Desperate calls from patients with rare diseases for drug subsidies after a woman with an unusual genetic condition died because she couldn't afford the drugs. Stop killing patients, protesters shouted outside the government headquarters today. The members of a rare disease patients group, along with several lawmakers, were calling on the government to provide funding for Hong Kongers who suffer from rare medical conditions. They're asking to benefit from the same subsidies as those with more common diseases.
Medical costs for the drug is about $20,000 a month. And for an ordinary family, they cannot afford such expenses. So we need some subsidies from the government. And unfortunately, the subsidy hasn't come yet. So we're looking at patients dying while there is medication available to at least sustain their lives.
New People's Party lawmaker Regina Ip is backtracking on her own pledge of not joining the new administration. She now says she will actually consider joining Carrie Lam's new team after a meeting with the CE-elect. Ip visited Lam's office in Central today along with a few members of her own party. She refused to share details of their discussion, but only said they've touched on some livelihood issues. She added she wouldn't nominate any of her party members to take office in the new administration because the party is, quote, not mature enough. Here's what she had to say about her own participation.
I consulted my party's Central Committee on the question of rejoining the Executive Council. Members are generally in favour, and I told Mrs. Lam that I would leave the matter in her hands. If she considers that I could be of service to her administration, I would actively consider. The issue is in her hands.
News elsewhere now, and North Korea has accused Washington of pushing the Korean Peninsula to the brink of nuclear war following yesterday's joint training drill. 2 US bombers from Guam flew over the Korean Peninsula on Monday as part of a training session alongside South Korea's Air Force. The move prompted outrage from Pyongyang. State media called it a nuclear bomb dropping drill. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has courted controversy again, saying he'd be honoured to meet Kim Jong-un under the right circumstances, even as North Korea threatens to continue its nuclear weapons tests. Well, staying in the US, and documentary filmmaker Michael Moore is never one to shy away from controversy. This time, the Oscar winner is taking his political views to Broadway in the hope of bringing down US President Donald Trump. The one-man satirical show promises to take audiences on a ride through the United States of insanity. Moore, who won an Oscar for his gun violence film Bowling for Columbine, has been a vocal critic of Trump. 3 weeks before the presidential election, Moore released a documentary called Michael Moore in Trumpland.
His Achilles heel is his very, very, very thin skin. And so we need to have a sort of nonviolent comedy shiv, just that we insert ever so slightly under it. And hopefully that will discombobulate him enough to where he won't be able to think out or plan much of what he's hoping to do.
Thousands of people in Hungary took to the streets to voice their support for the European Union. EU flags were waved through central Budapest in a rally dubbed We Belong to Europe. The march was organised by Momentum, a so-called upstart political movement, which recently announced it would run in the country's parliamentary election next April. The group stand against what they view as Russia's creeping influence on the continent.
We're not greedy people. We're not like the government is saying. We'd like to remain European citizens and not a servant nation of a Russian region.
Next, the latest from the world of business. Well, it's been a mixed trading day as we find ourselves sandwiched between two public holidays. This also accounted for the lull in trading. Investors were cautious as they weighed up China manufacturing data that found growth slow to its weakest pace in 7 months as domestic and export demand faltered. The Hang Seng Index ended up 0.3% at 24,696. Bell International jumped 16%, its biggest single session surge in at least 10 years, on news of a company buyout. Revenue at the gambling hub of Macau rose 16% in April as new resorts helped draw both high rollers and casual gamblers. The number of mainland tourists visiting Hong Kong during the mini Golden Week holiday hit a 5-year high. According to the Immigration Department, around 620,000 tourists flocked to the city from April 29th to May the 1st. 490,000 of them were mainland visitors. This marks an increase of as much as 3.7% compared with the last few years. Well, tourism wasn't the only sector that got a boost over the long weekend. Sales of second-hand homes also saw a jump during this period. There were between 8 to 31 transactions in some of the large housing estates around town. One real estate agent showed sales jumped 70% compared with the same period last year. And Airbnb has bowed to regulations by the city of San Francisco after a year-long lawsuit as the company eyes an initial public offering. The online home rental marketplace will create a registration system where San Francisco homeowners must first supply their name, address, and zip code. The compromise marks the latest effort by the company to improve its relationship with regulators globally. And will this be something to tweet about? Twitter is expanding its live broadcasting portfolio in a bid to boost viewership as the online news and social networking service continues to struggle at winning a major share of online advertising. Twitter will begin hosting WNBA games, 24-hour Bloomberg News, and a tech show, among others. Shares jumped 6% in trading yesterday.
Sunday on $1 trillion in federal funding, and President Donald Trump signed off on it. The money will pay for federal programs such as airport and border security, education, and foreign aid. Big score for Republicans, a $12.5 billion increase in defense spending, with the possibility of an additional $2.5 billion if Trump's plan to fight the Islamic State gets approved. Plus, extra money for border security, but not for the wall. Democrats, on the other hand, fended off cuts to Planned Parenthood and, at least temporarily, the Environmental Protection Agency. But the budget is not official just yet. The House is likely to vote first on the package, probably in the early next week, and send it to the Senate for approval before Friday's midnight deadline.
Well, do stay with us because there's plenty more to come on the show. Don't go away.